The writer of this book tells his old days story where he worked as valet in a nice hotel at Las Vegas.
There was a person who was very rich and wildly successful in his car. He bragged openly and loudly about his wealth, often while drunk and always apropos of nothing. One day he handed several $1,000s of cash to my colleague, and said, "Go to jewelry store down the street, and get me a few $100 gold coins." Then they proceeded to throw the coins into the sea, skipping them like rocks, crackling as they argued whose went furthest, just for fun. Days later, he shattered a lamp in the hotel restaurant when the manager informed him that it cost $500 and he would have to replace it. Then the person taken out $5,000 from his pocket and gave to manager and said, "Get out of my face, and don't ever insult me like this again." But how long this behavior could last? Morgan the writer said that I learned years later that he went broke. Morgan said that money has little to do with how smart you are and a lot to do with how you behave. And behavior is hard to teach even to really smart people. Now, Morgan tells us about his most favorite person, Ronald James Reed, that was an American philanthropist, investor, janitor and a gas station attendant. He was the first person in his family to graduate high school. He hitchhiked to campus each day. His life was about as low as they come.
Reed fixed cars at a gas station for 25 years and swept floors at J.C. Penney for 17 years. He bought a 2-bedroom house for $12,000 at age 38 and lived there for the rest of his lives. He was widowed at age 50 and never remarried. Reed died in 2014 at age 92. Which is when the humble rural janitor made international headline. In 2014 2,813,503 people had died and only 4,000 of them had a net worth of over $8 million. When they passed away, he was in one of them. In his will, the former janitor left $2 million to his stepkids and more than $6 million to his local hospital and library. It turned out there was no secret. He had not won any lottery and had not received any inheritance. Reed saved what little he could and invested it in blue-chip stocks. Then he waited for decades on ends, as tiny savings compounded into more than $8 million. That is, it from janitor to philanthropist. Now chapter 1 begins. No one is crazy. Your personal experience with money makes up maybe 0.000000001% of what is happening in the world, but maybe 80% of how you think the world works. People from different generation, raised by different parents who earned different incomes and held different values in different parts of the world, born into different economies, experiencing different job markets with different incentives and different degree of luck, learn very different lessons. Everyone has their own unique experiences with how the world works. And what you have experienced is more compelling than what you learn secondhand. So all of you, us, you, me, everyone go through the life anchored to a set of views about how money works that vary wildly from person to person. What seems too crazy to you makes sense to other people. The person who grew up in poverty thinks about risk and reward in ways the child of a wealthy banker cannot fathom if he tried. The stockbroker who lost everything during the Great Depression experienced something the tech worker basking in the glory of late 1990s cannot imagine. You know things about money that I don't, and vice versa. We go through life with different beliefs, goals, and forecasts. This isn't because one of us is smarter than the other or has better information. It's because we've lived different lives, shaped by unique and equally persuasive experiences. So equally smart people can disagree about how and why recession happens, how you should invest your money, how much risk you should take, and so on. Spreadsheet can model the historic frequency of big stock market declines, but they cannot model the feeling of coming home, looking at your kids, and wondering if you have made a mistake that will impact their lives. Studying history makes you feel like you understand something. But until you have lived through it and personally feels its consequences, you may not understand it enough to change your behavior. As investor Michael Bathick says, some lessons have to be experienced before they can be understood. We are all victims, in different ways, to the truth. In 2006, a report was published on the detailed information at what people of America do with their money. People's lifetime investment decision is heavily anchored to the experiences those investors had in their own generations. Especially experiences early in their adult life. If a person grew up when the stock market was strong, he will invest more of his money in stocks later in life compared to those who grew up when inflation was high. The economists wrote, "Willingness to bear risk depends on personal history. Not intelligence or education or sophistication. Just the dumb luck of when and where you born." When the Financial Times interviewed Bill Gross, the famed bond manager, in 2019, Gross admits that he would probably not be where he is today if he had born a decade earlier or later. This kind of thing does not just affect the opportunities you come across. It affects what you think about those opportunities when they are presented to you. To Gross, bonds were wealth-generating machines. To his father generation, who grew up with and endured higher inflation, they might be seen as a wealth incarnation. Take stocks. If you born in 1970, S&P 500 increased almost tenfold, adjusted for inflation, during your teens and 20s. If you born in 1950, the market went literally nowhere in you. Two group of people, separated by chance of their birth year, go through life with a completely different view on how the stock market works. But every financial decision a person makes, sense to them in that moment. They tell themselves a story about what they are doing and why they are doing it, and that story has been shaped out by their own unique experiences. Take a simple example. American spends more on lottery tickets than on movies, video games, music, sporting events, and books combined. The lowest income household in the U.S. on an average spend $412 a year on lotto tickets, 4 times the amount of those in the highest income groups. Studies have shown that a significant portion of Americans, around 40%, would struggle to cover an unexpected expense of $400. It's a concerning paradox. Many lower-income Americans spend a significant portion of their limited resources on lottery tickets, even though they often struggle to cover unexpected expenses. Studies have shown that households with lower incomes spend considerably more on lottery tickets than higher-income households. This is despite the fact that a significant portion of Americans, around 40%, lack an emergency fund of even $400. This seems crazy to us. But we are not in the lowest income group. So, it is hard for many to us to intuitively grasp the subconscious reasoning of low-income lottery ticket buyers. We all do crazy stuff with money, because we are all relatively new to this game, and what looks crazy to you might make sense to me. Now let me tell you a story about how Bill Gates got rich in second part of this video.